Christopher Bedford, the founding partner of Right Forge, which, if we have time, I want to talk to you about. Give, Send, Go sure made a huge mistake by not being a partner with you. You're also the senior editor of the Federalist. And I wanted to bring him in because he has an article out. 2 years after lockdowns, the West troubles aren't ending. They are just beginning. So, by the way, welcome. A great article. Lay it out.
Thanks for having me. Looking at this COVID, the end of COVID policies are kind of happening right now. People are feeling springtime is here. It's a return to normalcy. The masks are finally going off the children. This morning, the masks went off kids in D.C. Public schools for the first time. And people have this reaction to say, we can move on. But I don't think that COVID, this is the end of an era. I think this is just the beginning of an era that we're entering into in the West. We've just made over the last 2 years, we have changed our relationships with every single major aspect of our society. Our churches, we have a different relationship with because a lot of them were closed for periods of time. They knelt before the secular.
Yeah, a lot of people fell away and never returned.
About 20%, I think, less seats in the pews right now because people who told you the sacraments are essential to eternal life, or just said, "Don't worry, you might get sick." That's a break in faith. Our relationships with the teachers are completely different than they were. The parents are now under the boot of teachers. They're in charge. Parents weren't even allowed into their schools to check on their kids or make an appointment for years. Our relationship with the politicians are completely different. They now, and the bureaucrats, they make the rules. We just answer them. We're all in this together. You're selfish to say otherwise. Our relationship even with the police, if you're in a place like New York City or California, where police officers who are already under assault all over the country now have to come in and arrest people with their children for dining out. Our relationships, even with healthcare workers, someone who always thought, well, these folks are on our side. Now they're saying a husband who's dying of COVID can't be with his wife who's dying of COVID. They have to die alone. You can't see your parents when they're dying. You can't visit someone who's got terminal cancer or hold your baby after you have one because somebody might get COVID. The entire West's interactions with our society have completely, fundamentally altered. And now everyone just wants to move on. But this is when historians look at this, just the way they used to look at Black Tuesday was the kickoff, the stock market crash, and the Dust Bowl, and eventually World War II. They're going to look back and say COVID was a kickoff, the lockdowns, not the disease, the human reaction, to kick off to the stagflation we're risking, these wildly fluctuating fuel prices, or a land war in Europe. This is going to be the beginning of what defines a pretty dark era for the American people. We need to wrap our heads around it.
What does that mean to you?
It means that this is going to be a very, very trying time. And
in what way?
For the American people, because we're going to be pushed into all kinds of different policy decisions, like you talk about all the time, the Great Reset, at a time when what's made the American regime possible for all these years is a thriving middle class, Christian beliefs and strong church attendance, civil and civic institutions that keep us going. And every one of those things has been weakened.
And entrepreneurship. The small business.
The people who were absolutely wiped out. One of my co-founders at Right Forge had a thriving catering company and event space down in Washington, D.C., doing over 1,000 events. He ended up staying with me for a period of time during COVID because he lost everything. And fortunately, he's been able to hire most of those employees back for Right Forge. But the entrepreneur class was smashed. Now, if we're going to enter this era where the elites are trying to say, we're doing a big reset, we're changing this world, we're going to make it in our image, and we lack the civic institutions, the middle class, the economy to really push back, then we're in trouble. And I got news to you. Electing a bunch of Republicans, which is going to happen in a year, and to D.C. is not going to fix it.
Not going to fix it.
It needs to be local. Actually, talking to Ricky yesterday kind of blew my mind.
Executive producer of TV. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Talking to Ricky yesterday blew my mind because she said, 2 years ago, no one knew the name of the county judge in Dallas. No one was paying attention to the local politicians. San Francisco couldn't name their school board. Loudoun County couldn't name their school board. So if there's going to be a revival, which we really do need in a spiritual and a political sense, the local politics of it are what's going to drive it. People seizing that.
I was talking to a pastor just this weekend, and he said, I've just disconnected. I don't know what's going on in the world. I'm just kind of focusing on my thing. And I'm like, Pastor, you better wake up, because things are happening and they're on your doorstep, and your people are going to need to know, how do I weather this? How do I weather this? If you are not, as a pastor, speaking out right now, it's why your pews are becoming more and more empty, quite honestly. You didn't have enough to offer to be able to have people understand through a biblical sense what they're seeing with their own eyes.
When you see the American great revivals that we've had and we're famous for, those weren't pastors who simply opened up the church doors and said, I hope someone comes in. They were people who rode on horseback and in carriage thousands and thousands of miles up and down the eastern seaboard, talking and preaching 2-3 times a day to thousands and thousands of people, having a reach that a lot of modern folks would be amazed at their reach, and they did it just by who could hear their voice. So we need exactly what you're talking about. Priests and pastors can't just open the doors and say, I hope you come in. We need to go out. We're engaged in spiritual warfare right now on the technological level, political level, and our people need to understand that they don't. Our religious leaders don't serve governors and mayors. They are princes of the church. They should address each other as equals, not as servants, and go out there and realize that they're the people who save this country.
You know, it's I've mentioned this a couple of times today because I think it's worth saying. Was it the grand leadership of any politician in the world, let alone ours, that got Nike and Adidas and Pornhub and all of these gigantic corporations to pull out of Russia? No, it wasn't our politicians. It wasn't a government. It was the Great Reset. It is these corporations who have now put us in a situation to where we're on the edge with Russia, and the American people or its representatives haven't really even spoken yet. And it's a little concerning that we are just going along for the ride, and we're not recognizing that we're in the backseat.
I wonder what we could do to make Pornhub pull out of the United States. I would like that policy. Yeah. But exactly, I think this is part of some of what we've gone through in the last 2 years with COVID, where this whole disinformation, this censorship, this shutting you down, this deplatforming you became almost normal. Don't worry, it's for the good of us all. It's for health. The doctors are in charge. That switched pretty seamlessly to seeing people, Republican senators or daytime talk show hosts on The View, calling for the investigation and imprisonment of those who say, hold on a second, why am I fighting Putin right now? I understand what's going on is awful over there, but why is this an American war? And you see all these folks kind of coming out and just saying we need to do a no-fly zone. We need to, and that sounds nice. It nice.
Does. Sounds like World War III.
It sounds like World War III. It's not a humanitarian action. That's called putting jets in the air with Russian jets at the same time in a way that they're going to fight. And that's how they get their foot in the door to for the war that a lot of folks want.
You know, it's really disturbing to see, like you said, Tulsi Gabbard is called a tool just for questioning. Just for questioning. She's now a tool for the Russian state and should be investigated. Tucker Carlson should be investigated and possibly face prison time. Russell Brand, they're now coming after him as well. If we don't stop this destroying any idea of freedom of speech and, toleration of another opinion, we don't make it very long.
And that's part of what COVID did. That's what the lockdowns did. It's disinformation. That's such a freaky word. It's just like that phrase, you're on the wrong side of history. It dehumanizes your opponents. It makes you on the right side.
So, but we have said this. We have many of the things that people who were said, that's disinformation, turned out to be right. COVID is over and
the masks.
And what's his name? Fauci. I think he's in the FBI witness protection program at this point. I haven't seen him at all.
And it's hard to keep him away from a camera.
It's really hard. So we have this. People know it, but nobody's standing up. Why? Why is there this disconnect from what people know and standing up? It seems to only have happened at the schools, really.
The schools, I think, and I hope that that's the beginning of something that's broader, because it's getting these folks who are involved. I was really hopeful that the Tea Party was going to lead to more local involvement, but it seemed like after some of the big, great rallies we had, the prayer rallies, you had that a lot of it kind of faded away. People went back because it was comfortable, but the left has made things so uncomfortable for the last 2 years. I'm hoping that folks do get involved, and I'm really hopeful of the Supreme Court ruling on Roe v. Wade or on abortion, because that is going to put it back, politics, to a local level.
It will.
That's going to make people, it suddenly really matters who your state representative is, because that decides whether or not there's baby sacrifice in your state or not. The left and right will be reinvigorated, And this whole kind of just national news cycle that we live on, people will start to realize it's actually my town meetings that matter. It's my state meetings that matter. That's what drives this country. That's what built this country. But at the same time, we have big tech. They're not going to take their foot off of our throats. Amazon Web Services shutting down internet servers for Donald Trump right after the riots. They're going to keep on trying to censor and putting this down. So that's what we're doing with Right Forge, what you guys do with The Blaze, is just trying to build that alternative because we can't rely on the corporate media.
So tell people about Right Forge if they don't know, because I think this would have been the answer for Give, Send, Go. Mm-hmm. And I think they were with you for a while and then dropped out and
yes, we worked together for a few days, and they were great folks, but they ended up going in a different direction from ours, and then they were hacked shortly after. Because those hackers are out there trying to destroy you. Whether you're Texas Right to Life, hackers attacking them, the anonymous group of hackers. What we do is we build internet servers. The libertarians have always said in D.C., if you don't like it, go build your own. But a lot of them didn't actually mean that because they're actually working with big tech.
Right.
So Parler went out and they built their own alternative to Twitter. And then the powers that be just decided that they were going to destroy them for completely spurious reasons. The New York Times and CNN would just cheer it on like it was a victory for free speech over disinformation. And the American dream was just shot in public. The idea that if you don't like something, do it better. So we started an internet server company because suddenly the infrastructure that the websites are built on is become a politicized war zone. Now we're just trying to make one that is a Bill of Rights internet infrastructure. It's just American infrastructure. I don't care what your politics are. I want you to be free to express them. What your business is. What people should be able to be free to express themselves as we are in this country. The laws that govern what we say and do should be made by the people's representatives, not by the terms of your user agreement in Silicon Valley.
You know, what you have done would have been championed by the libertarian and by the left, even, I bet, more so than the right 25 years ago.
It's been such a shift.
It's such a crazy shift, and it's put everybody... if you're at all awake, puts you in a situation where thinking people are finding themselves in the room and allies with people that the rest of the world said you should hate.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Glenn Greenwald and Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, Donald Trump, and Glenn Beck walk into a room together. Yeah. It's like I wouldn't have believed that 5 years ago, but now it's all happening.
It is crazy. It is really crazy. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. This is Christopher Bedford. He is the founding partner of Right Forge. You should check Right Forge out. Also senior editor of the Federalist. You guys are doing extremely important work right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I read it every day. The Federalist.com you can find, or rightforge.com.